In this video today, I'm going to break down the cost of a PhD. So when I was doing my own undergraduate degree, I had very little knowledge on a PhD, how much it would cost, where you got the money from to do it. So I'm hoping for you guys to give you some clarity on the steps required in order to get a PhD. So these are the two ways you can do it. You've got self-funded and funded. I'm going to start off with self-funded. So this is where you pay for the PhD yourself. And each country is different. So you'll see here in the blue text that in the UK it's around about £3,000 up to £6,000 a year. This can be over a 3, 4, 5 year process. However, if you're in a different country or you're looking at going to a different country, I would spend that time on Google looking at the average prices. And each PhD student will have different ways of funding this. So for some, it's getting a part-time or even a full-time job on the side of a PhD. This could be in a supermarket, in a gym, in a bar, a restaurant. But then you get other people who are actually already embedded in professional sport. They're in some sort of organization where they decide to upskill and do a PhD and they pay for it out of their own pocket, or maybe even get a little bit of money from the organization they work for to fund it too. So this can be S&C coaches, sports scientists, physiotherapists. It's very common now for people to upskill and do it this way. There are other ways though. So it's certainly not easy to pay for a PhD. You can get loans. Each country is different and each country has different tuition fees, so it's worth looking at. But in the UK at least, if you go on gov.uk, you can look at the doctoral loans and see how that can help you fund your studies. The second route is the funded. So this can be where the university pay you to go and do a PhD. And again, it does vary by country, but if you look at the UK and Ireland, you're typically looking at around 15 to 20 grand a year. And there is additional money in a pot for conferences, so they pay you to go and fly and deliver your presentations across different countries. There's research funding and also for your training as well. There's also money for teaching, so you can see that 15 to 20 grand a year, but that can rise if you're teaching as well. And typically during a PhD, that's what you'd be doing. And this contract of 15 to 20 grand a year is typically over 3 years. So in exceptional circumstances, if the PhD goes really wrong, something happens that slows down your studies, there is scope to get more money, but yeah, traditionally you're looking at a 3 year contract. But it is worth looking at findaphd.com. If you go on there, you'll see predominantly most PhDs are self-funded, but there are plenty of funded ones on there as well. I would take the time to have a look at them though, look at the requirements and get a feel for what's funded, what's self-funded, and have your own strategy for how you can make that work for yourself. So to summarize, both of these routes are competitive though. For me, I used to think, well, if it's self-funded, if it's my own money, it's probably a bit easier to get a PhD. It's definitely not. Either way is still very difficult and competitive. And it's likely that if you're not back, you'll go for applications and they don't always go well. You don't always get an interview, you don't always get a PhD. It's very, very challenging and very competitive. But I would take your time. I'd consider the right option for you. For me, I moved abroad. To make it work for me, it was a great opportunity to go to Germany, to go to Australia. And that was a gamble, that was a risk that I took. And for you, you may have to move away from home, you may have to make sacrifices with friends and family. So I wouldn't rush into a PhD. I'd definitely take your time and consider the right option for you. Okay, so that was my short video on how you can fund a PhD. If you'd like to learn more about my PhD, how I stayed afloat financially throughout those 3 years, get in touch. If you have any general questions on a PhD, you've got Sports Science Hacks on Instagram, and you've got Twitter at CJThompson90 if you have any questions. Okay, thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you again soon.